Hi everyone, I am Marie Javins. I am the editor-in-chief at DC Comics. Sort of like Lois Lane is the editor-in-chief of the Daily Planet. For those of you who don't know that, you're probably going to hear a lot more about that kind of thing. To my right is Dan Slott, writer of Superman Unlimited, and to my left is Mark Waid, Action Comics. They also have written many, many other things. But we're here today to talk about Superman. And you know, this is just a random aside, sort of a funny little thing that happened to me today. I went to the Burbank Farmers Market to drop off my compost for the week, you know, in my Prius, as one does. And I was walking past the artisanal yogurt stand, as one does at the farmer's market, and I overheard one of the guys working at the artisanal yogurt stand, and he was in the middle of talking about something he had seen at his local comic store. I overheard him say, "And Mark Waid is going to be at my local comic store." And I just turned around and I said, "I'm going to go see him right now." And I just kept walking. They were like, "Oh!"
Mark Waid, #1 on yogurt makers.
It was pretty funny. Anyway, comics, of course, as you know, are everywhere. And one of the things that has been with us as long as we've had superhero comics is Superman. You know, he's, how old is he?
It's like 1938. He's coming up on 90.
He's about 32? 28? I don't know. But he's also 90. He's also 90. That's part of the elasticity of the characters, right? Like, they continue to evolve and yet still be, you know, the same nice sort of farm guy journalist, you know, under it all. Anyway, have I talked too much?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. let's put on the slides, and that's.
How many people are happy to see the DC Bullet back?
Look at that. What kind of summer is it going to be? Summer of Superman. I think we all know that by now. Also, it's summer of crypto. But we only got the one logo done. So the Summer of Superman Special #1 on sale pretty soon, April 16th. Let's talk about the mission statement for the Summer of Superman and how is it working with 40 minutes and like what is this one shot?
Mark, you're the first chapter.
I'm the first chapter. I think the mission statement really is, for those of you who have lapsed in your Superman reading, or for those of you who have never really picked up a Superman comic, this is your sampler. This is what's going, this sets you up for what's coming in the rest of the year, but it's also telling a complete story that's a really good story, I think. And this is, you know, your good story and a preview of what is to come in the Superman universe for the next few months. The end. For instance, this is from the first chapter where young Clark is there with young Lana and fum-fering as we all do in front of pretty cheerleaders, and he's going to tell her his secret.
Oh, so this is in the past.
This is in the past. This is Clark as a I think he's 16 here. This is Clark as a young kid just learning the ropes.
And there's the crypto.
This is Clark as Superboy.
As Superboy,
in the
exactly.
DC universe.
Yes, the original OG, except no substitute Superboy.
So in this book, the Summer of Superman Special, we've got 3 different time periods, right?
Right.
So this is the first one.
Right.
We don't go back to like, here's a baby in a rocket.
No, but we do cover.
We've heard that one a lot.
Right, we do cover the early days. The idea is we do my chapter's the early days. Dan is the middle. Dan's what's happening right now.
Present day, boom. And Josh's chapter is going to tease you into the future of Superman.
Exactly.
Let's go to the next. Yeah. The art looks great.
Art's great.
Fantastic. Jorge is amazing, and I think what you're going to see, like when these 3 monthly Superman books come out, Mark's is going to be about Superman, Clark, Superboy, and Krypto growing up in Smallville. And this new book that I'm going to be working on with Rafa Albuquerque is going to be Superman in the present day, with Lois and John Kent and Krypto and working for the Daily Planet. One of the things we get to celebrate in this issue, Summer of Superman, is a major Superman continuity moment. The wedding of Lana Lang and John Henry Irons.
And this is current, right? Because this is about to happen.
This is my story.
Is that a spoiler?
No, it's not a spoiler. My story is the present day where Lana might be getting some cold feet at the very last moment. And in Josh's chapter, you will get to see the wedding.
Well, okay.
Well, yeah, you can see the wedding.
It doesn't go well when you don't deliver on the wedding. So yes, you get to see the wedding.
We're going to show you the wedding.
Dan, what is your
Oh, I don't know. It's so gorgeous. Rafa Albuquerque's born to be Superman. Look at that. This free comic book day, you'll be able to get 10 pages of the whole team from Superman Unlimited, showing you kind of like what we feel Superman's about, and setting up a very big event that will happen. Is it setting up something that's going to change Superman's life in the DC universe, and also setting up something that's going to change how the Daily Planet works in the entire DC universe.
Is there a new character?
There's some new characters. It's going to be fun. We're going to.
We can say, I think.
We're going to talk about Tina.
Imani Edge.
Oh, Imani Edge. This is Imani Edge. She is Morgan Edge's now ex-wife, who is now got control over all of his media empire. And that's going to have a very big stake in stuff that you'll read about on Free Comic Book Day.
And who is Tina?
Tina is...
Why does she spell her name so funny?
Tina, no, that's the correct spelling of Tina. Tina, we will meet in Superman Unlimited #2. She is the goddaughter of King Salavar of Gorilla City, and she will be in charge of the IT department.
Wait, is she a gorilla?
She's a gorilla. She's a gorilla from Gorilla City.
Well, they're very smart.
Prejudice.
They're very smart in Gorilla City, aren't they?
Yes.
They have like really good brains, right? Not monkey brains, like gorilla brains.
But I'm pretty sure working at the Daily Planet, jerks like Steve Lombard will leave bananas on her desk, and that won't be nice.
Look, I pay people to do that in my office. It's not my desk. Well-known fun fact. So that looks great, doesn't it? That just looks great.
It's the first time I got to write Superman opening up a shirt. So happy. I can hear the voices in the bottom. He's like, inner gang is shooting up this Metropolis police car. He's like, we need backup. He's like, back you. And in that top panel, he's like, they're reading them the rights. And that inner gang crook is like, I know my rights. There's something I got to say to Superman. And Superman's like, I'm all ears.
Why? Because he's a nice guy.
Yeah, well, he goes, you remember last week when you stopped that giant ape from stomping over Star City? He's like, Titano, yes. He was like, my Aunt Dottie lives in Star City, and I just wanted to say thank you. And the guy's like, anytime. And he's like, you're embarrassing me. So she's my favorite aunt. And that's how I see Superman.
Oh. All right, let's move along. Look, it's Action Comics. Woo! All right, let's move over here to Mark, because Mark writes Action Comics, and Mark has written Action Comics before.
Yeah.
But this is the start of a brand new scenario different time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what is your new mission statement for Action Comics with Skylar Patridge?
The new mission statement is to make 6-year-old Mark Waid very happy, but it is also to tell the story of Superman learning the ropes. There's been thousands of Superman stories, Superboy stories told over the years. I know because I read them all. And they're great, but they always treat him like a young Superman, like a short Superman, where he's already got his act together. Whereas we're picking him up right before he takes on the suit. Right before he's been told by the Kents, he's been told by Mom and Pa, we gotta keep this secret. You can't go out in the suit yet, because once you do, there's gonna be a lot of people with a lot of questions, and we have to really think that stuff out before you do this. And of course, he ends up in the costume. And so suddenly the run of the book is not just Superboy being Superboy, but it's also, they haven't thought about the secret identity at all. They haven't thought about glasses yet. They haven't thought about, do we make the costume out of baby blankets? None of this stuff they were completely unprepared. So the mission statement is really learning from ground zero how to be a superhero and what you can do. And it's drawn by Skylar Patridge, who is great. She recently did the Phantom Zone, the backup, the Phantom Zone art in Action Comics. You ever shot that Superboy costume again by her real quick? Yeah, I really like this because he's making it up on the fly. Like, this is why he's wearing sneakers. Because it hasn't occurred to anybody yet to make things out of baby blankets.
And it does look like somebody made it at home, right? Just
exactly.
Shorts,
right. The little mom can just sew it up at home. And the frustration is, of course, that they're farmers. They don't have a whole lot of money. There's not a big clothing budget. So please be careful with the costume.
That doesn't sound like it's going to go well. So, why did 6-year-old, okay, so Action Comics,
right.
Going back to Superboy,
right.
What is it that, what did 6-year-old Mark
love about that?
Why is this one of your dream jobs?
Because I love Superman, obviously. And I loved Superman for a long time, but I love Superboy for even longer because I connect with that. I grew up in rural Alabama. We weren't farmers, but we may as well have been. I didn't see a paved street until I was 14 years old. And so I grew up in functionally Smallville. And, as a young boy with a dog, and you could relate to that in a way that I couldn't at that age relate to Superman. So I made that bond. And I've always wanted to tell stories about that period in life where he doesn't quite have it all together yet. And watching him build a Superman identity from scratch is a joy.
And I maybe I know things I am not supposed to put into this story, right? But I know that there is this sort of Legion of Superheroes thing that is
heard of them. Okay.
And we don't want to spoil anything about where it all goes in the future, but where your action comic adventures with the teenage Clark Kent and line up with the existing Legion of Superheroes?
Soon.
Oh.
Soon. We will. They're Clark's first friends that actually have super abilities like he does. And I think that's an important moment in Clark's history. The question is, which Legion, what version? For those of you who don't know, we have rebooted Legion 45 times. And
there are a lot of them.
There's a lot of them, and there's a lot of versions of the Legion, but we are honing it down to a group that we are confident everyone will embrace, regardless of when you came into your Legion fandom.
What's happened to our art? Oh, there it is. There it is. Is he calling the dog? Great.
Of course, you got the dog.
Yeah, you always got
I think people agree with me that having the dog in the trailer was such a good idea.
Okay, let's go on and look at the next slides. What? Okay.
Yeah, you're going to be seeing a lot of crypto. I mean, we've announced it because we've solicited it. Also, Ryan Dorff is writing a crypto miniseries. We've solicited that, so we know. And he's got a great take on it. And I gasped at the end of this first issue. It was a really smart take.
Yeah.
great. That is it for slides. You can just talk.
Okay, great.
Okay. Okay.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about something kind of funny that we do in comics, because I don't know why we do it. Maybe one of you guys knows, but we do this sort of Lois Lane, Lex Luthor, Lana Lang, you know. We
The
do
LLs.
Yeah, we do the LLs.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why and how that happened, but maybe one of you guys know. And like, what do all of these people mean to Clark Kent? And like, does he only have friends who are LLs?
Who will have LLs? Exactly.
Lori Lamaris.
Or oh, I could go on all day.
Is that the mermaid one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
How much more time do we have with Google and I and a Superwoman of the planet Starzl?
Well, I think it's because he's from the House of L. L.
Yes, that's it. Yes, I like that. So, by the way, James Bartholomew Olsen, also 2 L's. So, Olsen, then spell it out. There you go.
I did it. I did it, folks. That's why I'm the other
It was something from the '60s where young kids wrote in a lot more letters to Superman than they do today, and they just enjoyed. The editorial team had a really fun time in the letters pages. We used to do letters pages, where fans would throw in ideas for new LL characters, Lightning Lad. And so they even did a story about it once. They did a story where Superman gets a prediction from a machine that says an LL will save your life today. And then he ends up in a kryptonite trap.
It was in one of the treasures.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he ends up in a kryptonite trap, and he's thinking, well, great. There's Lightning Lad. Oh, Lightning Lad's going that way. Oh my God, there's this guy, and there's Lois Lane. She's going to save me. Oh no, she's going off that way. It was a nail biter. It was a nail biter.
I remember the punchline.
No, go ahead. The punchline was,
it's a little kid in a little leaguer uniform, and it's a little leaguer. I've been doing my research.
Yeah.
I've been diving in. Yeah.
And what do all these LLs mean to Clark Kent?
Yeah.
Like Lois.
Like, oh,
I
they're
think
the love of his life.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, that's good.
That's
good.
That's pretty good.
The editor-in-chief asking that question. I don't have an answer.
All right, this just in.
Okay, so talking about the letters pages made me sort of think back to a different century. A different century, perhaps.
Feel old.
Once upon a time.
Yes.
Dan kind of knows. He's got my number. All right. So once upon a time, as a wee intern, later assistant editor, I was tasked with writing letters pages on many comic books. And I'm gonna guess. I know Dan for sure did that because he was an intern at the other company and where I worked. And I remember young Dan, little Dan.
Yes.
High school, college student, right?
College student.
Yeah.
Well, no, I lied. I just graduated.
And you lied?
And I told everyone I was still in college to get the college internship.
Oh. We want your career back. Sorry.
I mean, you're not actually allowed to be an intern after you graduate because then the sort of insurance.
And that's why
it doesn't cover you.
Since me, every single intern has to fill out a giant stack of legal documents. So whenever I'm in like an office and there's an intern, I'm like, did they make you sign that stack? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, that was me.
And Mark predates me in this industry. Not by much, I'm sure.
Thank you.
But presumably you also...
I was an editor at DC Comics from 87 to 89. And I did my share of letters pages. They were a coveted assignment because you were paid crap back then as a young assistant, but at letters pages paid an extra $20 a shot. So
when I was doing it, it was up to 50.
Yeah, we did 50.
We were fighting.
Eventually became 100.
Having knife fights over them at the office. The embarrassing ones are the ones where you work on a book that didn't quite get the number of letters that most of them got in, and so...
Don't tell the secret!
Okay.
Don't tell them. Go ahead.
I won't tell them that there are a handful of letters out there that are made up.
Oh, no! No!
It's okay, we don't do letters pages anymore, so we don't do that anymore.
Yes, exactly. How many people ever had a letter published in a letters page somewhere? You were old, but that is awesome. That's great.
What about on this panel? How many people on this panel had a letter printed on a letter page when they were a kid?
I had my share.
That's fun.
Just what?
I mean, all three of us have written letters for the letters
You
pages,
never had a letter published?
yeah.
What? No.
You never wrote one?
No.
You wrote them when you had the assignment, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but
Wait, reading
like as
the
a little
letters.
kid, you never wrote one?
No, as a little kid, I never wrote one. But I got to, I had some ignominy where, if you guys read Ren and Stimpy, the comic, yeah, you could ask questions to Dr. Stupid. I was Dr. Stupid. So I would answer everyone's questions as Dr. Stupid.
Where does Dr. Stupid get his degree?
I don't know. Stupid you.
For those of you coming in late, it's the comedy stylings of Abbott, and Abbott.
Mark, when you were a kid, where was your letter printed?
My letter was printed in Raven Bold number 195. It was a very indignant letter about a poor choice in a Batman Adam Strange plot. And I'm still pissed off about it.
I love it when you find stuff like this, a lot of George R.R. Martin letters.
Yeah.
And stuff where they're going and you're like, oh my god, there's little George R.R. Martin right there going, I just might
Every
read
once in
this
a while
one.
you'll find a famous person in there, which is kind of cool. So,
One of the things I did was, as the art returnist, I used to like have to throw out all the letters page because you couldn't reuse it. And I went to Greenwald and I said, like, is there anything you can do that seems like a waste? And he said, find someone who gave their full address, send them this letters page as a gift. And they're not allowed to tell you. And that's for the entirety until the letters pages went away. People would get their letter page.
So like we would send the
full size,
mechanical?
the 11 by 17.
That's cool.
all right, Marie, what else do we not do anymore that we want to spend a lot of time on?
I think people should write letters.
I do.
Comics.
I do.
We would bring back the letters pages if
If
they
they
wrote
wrote.
letters. But now everyone sends emails and texts. So is everyone going to text me their comments on Lois Lane? Yeah, let's not do that. All right, moving right along. Mark, I wanted to ask you about this quote that we dug up.
Right.
We found a quote that the Fleischer Superman cartoons deliver your definitive LL Lois Lane.
I think so. I think that's fair.
Why is that definitive, and how does it shape today's storytelling?
It is not because she only has 6 lines of dialogue. That is not it. She was, any people seen the Fleischer cartoons from the 1940s? If you haven't, I heartily encourage you to do so. They were made for 3 times the budget that other cartoons were made at the time. And they look phenomenal. They still hold up today in terms of animation. And Lois back then was a plucky, insistent, dive headfirst, lead with her face journalist who would dive into stories and was completely without fear. And I love that about Lois. That is my Lois, is a Lois who is like, I don't need Superman to save me. If he does, that's nice, but I don't need Superman to save me. I'm on my own.
I will jump into the back of this giant robot.
And I will jump in the back of this giant robot if I need to get a story.
Yeah.
Exactly, yes. There's no place she won't go. I love her.
But would you want her to be your boss?
No. She's nobody wants her to be your boss.
She would be a very demanding boss, I think.
Well, also, as we've been doing it, she's been the boss of Clark and been the boss of the Daily Planet for like 7 months in comics at this point, and for this foreseeable future. She doesn't want the job. That doesn't help either.
I mean, that's what makes a good editor-in-chief, right? They don't want the job.
The job, exactly.
That makes a perfect editor-in-chief.
Yes.
Well, I will follow into the gates of hell.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this unlimited thing. We've got Justice League Unlimited. We've got Superman Unlimited. So we got unlimited superheroes. We got unlimited super villains. What are the limits? If they're unlimited, where do you stop?
When you hit the green K, that's Superman's limit. The green K is Superman's limit. Green Kryptonite. He's unlimited until you get to Kryptonite.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
We are going to mess up Superman's world for the entire DCU. We are going to flood. There's going to be so much Kryptonite coming your way. It's going to be the most valuable resource on Earth. It's going to be traded everywhere. Villains are going to be able to get their hands on it a little easier. Superman, in Superman Unlimited, he will still be a very unlimited Superman. He can still lift that oil tanker over his head. He can fly it to the moon. But his Achilles heel is going to be more exposed. You know, you'll have some goons robbing a bank, and they hear Superman's coming. They will take out their clips and put in their Kryptonite bullet clips. When there's a scene in Superman Unlimited #1 where other Kryptonian-powered heroes are talking to Superman, telling him it's going to be a lot harder now. And he says, I'm a farm boy from Kansas. I don't mind a little hard work. He's going to try a little harder. He's going to sweat a little more. He's going to be a Superman that when you pick up each issue, he might lose. He won't. He's Superman. But he might. But he won't. He's a Superman.
I'm trying to think of how he's going to get out of this one.
You're going to have to read Superman Unlimited #1.
When's that out?
That's out, it's got right before a certain movie. It's almost like we timed it. That's the mission statement of Superman Unlimited #1, of Superman Unlimited, that there's going to be this incredible movie that's out, and if you walk out of that movie and you're like, I love that. You know, I've never read a Superman comic. I've never read a DC comic. I've never read a comic book. I've never read words. But I can go to the store and buy this amazing thing and get that feeling, and I can just walk into it fresh. Day one, I can pick this up, and I can get a great Superman comic. And it will be that next month too, and the next month too. You can come in, this is your ground floor comic, jump onto this comic.
Is the dog in it?
The dog is in there.
Good. That makes me happy. What about, so that's unlimited super villains, right? Because you're going to have a lot of bad guys coming at Superman post Kryptonite.
Superman has like a great rogues gallery. We're going to play some completely the way they are because they're perfect. We're going to take some other ones, we're going to upgrade them and give you them in a whole new light. And we're going to bring in some new supervillains too.
Are their initials LL?
They are now. But like instead of a Kryptonite man, we're going to upgrade it. We're going to get a Kryptonite king.
Huh.
Ooh. You'll sit on a Kryptonite throne.
Hey.
No, that stops there.
Okay.
It stops there.
Yeah, Superman already smashed those guys.
Yeah.
What about in Justice League Unlimited? Unlimited superheroes. What does that mean?
It means that anybody who is in the DC universe and is a superhero who wants to be a Justice Leaguer, congratulations, you were a Justice Leaguer. Doesn't matter whether you're Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, or whether you're a D-lister like Airwave. See, unless you're a D-lister like other characters that Marie, who is the editor-in-chief of DC Comics, has never heard of.
He's Hal Jordan.
Yeah. And plus we got, and then as you will see in Justice League Unlimited #8, it is even more unlimited than that because time is broken and stuff is bleeding through to the present, and this is how I managed to get Jonah Hex finally in the Justice League. So
I didn't know that part.
I'm not happy to be there.
So, Airwave.
We love
I
Airwave.
have actually heard of Airwave, but that's about it. So the funny thing about Mark is like he's sort of an encyclopedia.
Sort of. Please, you insult me.
So Mark, you are writing the new history of the DC Universe, right? How is that only 120 pages long?
It's through use of a crowbar. I mean, it is. So, History of the DC Universe, which comes out this summer, 4 issues, 4 30-page installments to tell 85 years of DC history. So I want to point out that Marv Wolfman and George Perez did this in 1986 with the DC Universe with 100 pages. And I have 20 more pages to tell 40 years worth of stories. So we figured it out. There is also, in the back of the book, there is an inclusive timeline that will cover the characters that maybe we didn't get to see in up front in the illustrated section, and we'll walk you through. Okay, this is now definitively the history of the DC Universe if you were living in the DC Universe. We're not going to deal with the reboots, we're not going to deal with the real world continuity of it, and we're going to deal with, this is Barry Allen, who knows as much about the DC Universe as almost anybody, being able to tell you from the beginning of time to the end of time, here's what happened. Even Hawkman, he's even figured out Hawkman.
So nobody laughs, so I guess they don't know Hawkman's story.
Nobody knows Hawkman's story. Thank you.
It's true. No, one guy, the guy who wrote the last Hawkman series, he knows it.
Yeah, true.
Rob Bendy, he knows it. How did you figure out what to remove from continuity? Like, you can't keep everything.
No,
because a lot of times it contradicts each other.
It does contradict each other a lot. A lot of it is, I mean, the good news is I'm working with a great editorial team. We got Brittany Holzer, we got Andrew Marino, and we got Marquise. Great work. Thank you. I just call him Marquise. And they're keeping me honest, right? Every decision we make is vetted by editorial, and we sit around the big round table seriously, and we just go over everything. And, you know, some things we fight for, sometimes we don't. But we've managed, I think, to narrow it down to what works. In fact, I actually wrote the timeline first, and then went through it with them and said, okay, here's 30 pages worth of material for this. Here's what's going to make the best stuff up front. What are the most important moments in this universe? So we've got a litany of artists. We have, on the first issue, we've got Jerry Ordway, heard of him, and Todd Mott. The second one, we have Brad Walker and Michael Allred, who was born to draw the Silver Age characters. And there's other surprises beyond there. So,
how many years in this book, how long has the DC Universe existed?
Since the beginning of time to the end of time. That's really it. So, billions and billions and billions of years. We really start with the very first moments that the universe came into existence, and we will see you out the door.
Great. That sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
What do you know that Barry Allen doesn't know?
I know what Barry Allen's future is. Because even Barry doesn't know where Impulse came from at this point, when we rebooted continuity, and that's his grandson.
We figured it out?
We figured it out,
You got it all worked in there?
We got it all worked in there.
Good.
So.
Well, what about Lois Lane? Does she know stuff that Barry doesn't know?
No. Well, she knows where Clark is ticklish. I guess that's about it.
Okay, let's... That's going to come out when?
That is going to come out...
July?
June. Thank you, Clark.
Great. That sounds great. So, something that's sort of interesting about everyone up here, well, the two people to my... The one to my left, the one to my right, and everyone up here.
Hi, you, Clark.
Is the sort of the internship and editorial, like being on both sides of this whole grand world of comics. We've all been freelancers, we've all been staff, and for me it really helps me because that way I know the various machinations that go on in the head of the freelancer, which sometimes be very challenging. Like, I just have to show up, and then stuff happens. But that's because I have a staff job. But it's very difficult sometimes. But we've all been on both sides.
Yes.
So I'm interested in knowing, and it's really funny for me when I look at Dan, right? Because I'm like, Dan was the intern, he was the art returns guy, and now he's like superstar writer, So, Dan, how did your staff jobs, your internships, your editorial art returns, all the time you spent in the office with Tom Brevoort and Evan Skolnick and whoever, how did that shape your writing career?
Oh man, there are all these points where, especially when you're a staffer, sometimes you have the advantage of being invisible. There was this one day where all these guys came up to Marvel, and I was the art returnist, and the bigger the star, the less they filled out their forms. And you had to hunt them down. And then when they came to the office, you gave them giant mountains of their art back because they finally filled. And there's one day where all these famous guys came in, and I had to hunt them all down, and they all had these giant stacks of all their art, and it was tiring for them to walk around with it. So they kept coming back to my office to catch a break and put the art down.
And you just chase them and make sure they take it with them?
No, they forget I was sitting there. And they're all talking like, yeah, do you think they're going to buy our company idea? Do you think they're going to... And I'm like, I'm there at the birth of Image, and I'm just sitting there being like, I'm not saying anything. They're saying all these secrets. And yeah, so that kind of stuff happened all the time, where you got to be the invisible man. And you got to, like, at one point, our illustrious leader, like, Jim Lee came in, and I gave him all this art, and Mike Mignola came in at the same time. And they each got their art. Whenever two artists were in the art room together and they each had their art, the obvious thing they start doing is going, oh, I like that, oh, I like that. And at one point, Jim Lee says to Mike Mignola, I love how you spot blacks on a page. How do you do that? And Mike Mignola flips over a page, and it's Mike Mignola doing an art lesson to Jim Lee, and I'm like, shut up, don't say anything, slam into the wall. Awesome.
How did all of this, like, I know then, so to my mind, like, here you are, somebody says, I think you're pretty funny, why don't you write Ren and Stimpy? But like, is it because you knew what the other side was like?
Well, yeah, I mean,
your writing?
A lot of times by being on the inside, you knew what the company needed, as opposed to, because people just pitch stuff. I have the best idea for this. Well, DC or Marvel doesn't need that. But like one of the biggest breaks I had in the industry was, it took DC a while, like the Batman Adventures cartoon would be out, and it took DC a while to catch up and finally put out the comic. And they did that with Batman Adventures, they did that with Superman Adventures, and I was sitting there up at DC, like working in the kid line, watching as the Justice League cartoon is coming out, and no one is mobilizing to get the cartoon ready, the comic ready. And I went to Dan Raspler, and I went,
that was an editor
at DC. You guys should have this book ready, and you could do a simultaneous launch and sell more books. And he's like, write that up. And I wrote up the thing to him. And then I knew, and no other writer knew, that there was going to be a Justice League Adventure book. So I got to get like 4 stories in the drawer. And that got me into that office deeper.
So is this the first time you wrote a DC?
Yeah, like I started, Katie Main, where I was working on Ren and Stimpy, she brought me in to do Looney Tunes. And then I kept being up at DC to do Looney Tunes and Scooby-Doo and Dexter's Lab and Powerpuff Girls and any kind of thing, desperately trying to get into the superhero side. And then Heidi McDonald and Joan Hilty trusted me to do Batman Adventure and Superman Adventure. And then and Dan Raspler, when he read one of my Justice League Adventure stories, he said, if I imagine this without the Bruce Timm art, just standard, this is a good Justice League story. Would you like to pitch me stuff? And I pitched him a couple of things. And one of the things I pitched him was Twilight Zone in the DC universe with the Phantom Stranger as your Rod Serling. And a different Twilight Zone story would happen to Robin or Deadman or somebody else. And I didn't get to pitch that in the room. Dan Raspler pitched it in the room. And it went around the room like the game of telephone. And people kept changing it, going, well, we can't sell a Phantom Stranger book. And then someone said, well, what if it was in the minds of, like, crazed inmates in Arkham? Well, that was good. And then they started talking about the Arkham Asylum mini. And then I got a call from Dan Raspler going, they liked all your pitches, but they really liked the Arkham Asylum one the best.
That's where that came from.
They said, we need to have your Arkham Asylum pitch. When can you have that? It was like on Monday. And I'm like, I didn't tell him I didn't pitch an Arkham Asylum thing. And then I was like, you get a chance to do an Arkham Asylum book. And then that's how that happened. And you stuck with it.
And Mark, you came from editorial,
I
right?
came from editorial. So the short version is I was on staff and I didn't want to be a writer, and then all these scripts came across my desk every day from Grant Morris, from Alan Moore, from John Ostrander, from Denny O'Neil, all these great scripts came across.
And you said, I can do that?
I said I learned, but I said I can't do that. I said I could learn how to write stories in 2 years easier than I would have on 10 years on my own. Now, if I may rest control for just a moment, because I know we're starting to get close to the end, what I'd like to do is ask the audience a question I enjoy asking them, which is why they love Superman. Who has an answer to the question why you like Superman or why you love Superman? Stand up, make it quick. Yes.
Like him because he's just heroic.
Yeah.
He goes for any time he sees trouble, he can help him, then he handles somebody.
Yeah.
He just goes for it.
He's a helper. Exactly. Rem, I can't actually see out there, so you might just have to stand up. Go ahead, yes, sir.
Superman's like a Boy Scout, the ultimate boy, like the nice guy, and like he does anything for you. He'll bend over backwards for you.
Now, at what point did the term Boy Scout become a pejorative? Because that always kills me. It shouldn't be. But he's referred to as a Boy Scout like that's a bad thing.
But he is.
But as you pointed out, it's not a bad thing.
He is. He embraces it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What about you? Yeah.
Because he's not better than us or your typical protagonist or hero.
Exactly. Good point.
Yeah.
We don't need Superman to be more like us. We need to be more like Superman. Last one. Yes, sir.
I think you can write the stakes as high as you want them to be, and he'll always succeed by being the most human and good.
Exactly. You can write the stakes as high as you want, and he will always be the winner because he is the most human, he is the most good. He is selfless.
And Mark, how do you answer that question?
I think that the thing I love about him most is that he's selfless, is that he can do anything. He could do anything. He could seize any country, he could have all the wealth in the world, he could own it, he could do anything, and he uses his powers for the benefit of other people. And that is his superpower.
People say, like, you think about Superman, that, you know, the belief that he could fly, this, and I'm like, no, the thing that is the fantasy element for me is that he can do all these things, and he chooses to help. It's like, and even if Superman doesn't have his, my take on Superman is that even if he doesn't have his powers, those stakes you were talking about, he still finds a way. If you remember that Grant Morrison story where he's Electric Blue Superman, and he still finds a way to move the moon, that was like the most Superman thing like ever. With a completely different power set, he's still Superman.
Do we have a moment for me to tell this story about when I fell in love with Superman? Do we have a moment, Clark? This.
Go ahead.
When I was a kid, I grew up in a broken home. I didn't have any friends because I was a couple of years ahead in school. I really felt like an outsider and an outcast. And I had been dressed like a goth at that point in my life today because I honestly felt like nobody cared. I honestly felt like nobody cared if I lived or not. I really felt that way. And I went to see the Superman movie. And I sat through that movie twice in a row. And I came out of that movie knowing that whatever I was going to do with the rest of my life, it was going to have to do with Superman. And it was because, and I'm not crazy, I knew he wasn't a real person. Nonetheless, Superman cares about everyone. And that meant something to me. That taught me at exactly the right moment in my life where I just became an acolyte forever. And I mean, there's a way of telling that story where Superman literally saved my life. And I've always been a Superman fan since.
I have spent over 10 years of my life writing about a hero who's guilted into being good, who's screwed up, and he's just trying to make amends. And I gotta say, I feel great as a human being now that I get to sit down and write Superman. The act of just summoning Superman to write it, you feel good.
Yeah.
He's making all the right choices. He's doing all the right things, no matter what. And there's no, sword over his head. He's doing it because it's the right thing to do. I love that so much. It's a nice, warm feeling to write Superman.
Yeah.
He's nice, and yes, is Boy Scout a pejorative? Well, it seems like a nice thing to help an old lady across the street or whatever get a cat out of a tree, right? Like, I don't have a problem with that, but he's just nice, and sometimes society goes in one direction or the other, and sometimes people want sort of the darkness and the gloom and the Gotham City of it all, and other times people are like, you know what, I'm good with the nice.
Yeah.
And the three of us up here, we would have come of age, in spite of not quite all the same age, we would have all come of age around the time of the Christopher Reeve Superman.
Yeah.
Right? And it was like a cultural moment. It was really an important You can believe a man can fly. Like, we had never seen that before that
Right.
time, really, other than in like cartoons.
You weren't there. You don't know what it was like to hear the audience gasp the first time Superman takes off and flies. I mean, gasp.
To me, the most magical thing about that I always remember as a kid watching it, because I watched the Fleischer Supermans and I watched George Reeve and I'd seen all these things. But this magical moment happens in this movie when Clark Kent stands up straight and he's suddenly a head caller and there's no special effects. It's all Christopher Reeve. He just goes from Clark to being Superman. That's what I believe. It's not just the glasses, it's not all that. Like, those are two different, oh my God. The verisimilitude of it all, right? Just, it felt right, and I walked out of that believing in Superman.
Yeah, and you're like, oh yeah, the glasses thing makes total sense now.
Yeah.
And it's funny, a lot of people did not grow up on that. Like, they were not born then. But we are about, like, I have pretty high hopes that we're about to experience a very similar cultural moment this summer.
How many people know other people who, they say, I don't really like Superman? Right. We are giving you the tools this summer to prove them wrong and to put in their hands, to show them with the Superman Special and with Superman Unlimited and
Free Comic Book Day one.
And Free Comic Book Day, we're giving you the tools to put these comics in people's hands and make them understand why you love Superman. And it is your job as somebody who loves Superman to try to convert somebody else. And we're giving you the tools. So please do it for Superman.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us here today. Again, this is Dan Slott and Mark Waid, and I'm Ree Jacobs, and we hope you all enjoy Kryptonite and Superman.